Alright. So, Jai Sadgurudeo, good morning to you all. Welcome to the weekly English Satsang organized by North American Institute of Vihangam Yoga. My name is Anand Gupta, and I have joined this Satsang from Morrisville, North Carolina. Before I proceed, I would like to offer my prayers to the lotus feet of Sadguru. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Par Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. In the current time, our daily day-to-day life has become busy in fulfilling our physical and mental requirements and social responsibilities. In this fast-paced routine life, the requirement of the soul are often forgotten. So first, I would like to congratulate all of you for taking some time from your busy schedule to fulfill the requirement of your soul through satsang. So we are blessed today to have an experienced practitioner who has such a firm grasp over Sadhguru's Siddhant or core principle of Brahma Vidya. Vijay Kumarji is joining us from Edison, New Jersey to help us unravel some of the most enigmatic concepts around intellect or buddhi or wisdom or vivek. This will be a continuing discussion from last week. Understanding these two will help us comprehend the difference between our conscious mind versus subconscious mind. Uh, Vijayji, over to you.
Thank you, Anandji. Jai Sadgurudeo, everyone. Let's take this opportunity to close our eyes and remember Sadguru Siddhafal Devji Maharaj, who brought this wisdom down for us to bring the real essence of our human life into reality. Let's pray to his holy feet, pray at his holy feet. बार बार वंदन करूं सद्गुरुदेव हमार, यहाँ वहाँ सब ठाम में महिमा परम्पार। शरण शरण मैं शरण हूँ, हे गुरु बंदी छोर, मोहि उबारो हे गुरु, यह सौ बार निहोर। That's good day, everyone. Once again, we always pray at the holy feet of Divine Sadgurudeo that you please, bestow us the light of wisdom. You please guide us, free us from the bondages that we are all tied with. And the bondages are not outside. The bondages that we are, the most, the strongest bondage that we are tied to is something which is lying within our chitta itself. It is the vrittis. The vrittis which are there in our chitta is what drives our habits, it drives our thoughts, it drives our actions. What circumstances, how we'll behave in certain circumstances. Two persons being put in the same circumstances react differently, all because there is something inside each one of us which makes a great impact in our thoughts, in our actions. And that is what is called chitta vrittis. And these chitta vrittis, meaning something which is already stored within our chitta, is what you and us develop by our day-to-day actions. So when we say the bondages of karma, which is the strongest bondage for any soul, which is like surfacial bondage, instead of saying strongest, I'll say the surfacial bondage, the most prominent bondage of the soul is the bondage of karma. And those karma is what is stored in our chitta. But of course, the root bondage is the avidya. The root bondage is avidya, the contrary knowledge, which is also there in our chitta as well. It is also in the form of vrittis. Everything that we experience, everything thing that we assume, there is a tagging for that experience, and that tag goes into chitta. So in chitta, you have the imagery tag of everything that you do. It's like live photography of all our actions, all our thoughts. And the reason we are discussing about this is because in the context of buddhi and vivek as well, the way we act is not always with 100% usage of the intelligence. Sometimes we get driven by our repeated actions that we have done in the past. Something that we have been doing in a certain way, we continue to do the same thing exactly in the same fashion because that subconsciously feels so natural to us. Only when we become conscious, then maybe we put an effort to bring some change in our habits, in the pattern of actions that we have been doing. Only when we get conscious about it. But if you're not conscious, our body will just drive you into actions following the same set pattern that is stored in our chitta. So, this is the abstract of what we are going to understand in detail and discuss in detail today in the satsang. Let me share my screen. I think, yeah, the host will have to allow me for sharing.
Right, Vijay.
Yeah, thank you. So, just revising what we discussed last week, we understood that buddhi is one of the four inner faculties, one of the four antahkaran. The four antakarans are man, buddhi, chit, and ahankar. We tried to understand how these four work together by taking a use case of if if we touch an object, then how things happen, how these four inner organs coordinate. So mind or the man is what actually, brings that sensation to the consciousness of the soul. So you feel a touch only when the mind is there to capture that sensation from the indriyas and pass it on to the consciousness. If the mind is absent there, then even though your hand touches a thing, you don't feel it because mind is not there to bridge a connection between the indriyas and our consciousness. So mind brings the subject to the consciousness so that you feel the subject. But mind is not, or the man is not something that recognizes what this subject is. Mind is like a postman. Postman doesn't know what is inside the envelope. It just knows where I have to post it. So it just, collect it, looks at the address, and just drops that in the mailbox. Similarly, mind is something which just collect the subject from the indriyas. Indriyas are the source of the subject, and the destination of the subject is the consciousness of the soul. So, from source to destination, mind job is to deliver the subject. Once the consciousness receives the subject, then the mind also, beyond acting just like a postman, mind also acts as a activator. It is mind that activates anything that mind associates with. It carries the consciousness of the soul and hence passes on the consciousness into those organs. And that's why mind has to be there with everything, even with the outer organs, for organs to be conscious of subject, or with the inner organs, even with chitta, with buddhi, with ahankar. Only when the mind is there, then they get conscious and become functional. So not only mind brings subject to the consciousness, but at the same time, it also, because it doesn't know what it is, it actually activates intellect, the buddhi. That's when buddhi comes into picture. So buddhi is activated by the mind. It's activated by the man. And then buddhi and mind together work to bring more subject from chitta. The chitta is where all our past experiences are stored. So it fetches all the related options from chitta, and then the buddhi works on making the comparison, and then it makes a conclusion that, oh, this is not a rope, this is maybe a wood stick, or whatever it is. So buddhi does the analysis, mind acts as a postman and also acts as an activator. Chit is just the repository and the camera of all our emotions, actions, everything that runs in our life, whether it is in the physical form or in the soft form. Even our soft emotions, everything is being captured. Our fear, our happiness, our sorrow, everything, rag, dvesh, everything, whatever we do, whether it is in the physical form or non-physical form, whether it is in the mental emotion, in the dimension of emotions, or in the dimension of physicality, everything is tagged with the vrittis and stored in our chitta. Okay, and then ahankar, what ahankar does, okay, so what will be your reaction? Once you feel a thing, we react to it. Means we actually act, we create new karma. And that's when the ahankar comes into action. For every reaction, for every reaction that you, sorry, for every subject that you feel, you react. You want to act on it. You want to do something. If ahankar would not have been there within you, if that inner organ ahankar would not be operational, you feel a thing, but you are kind of idle. You don't take any action. You don't know what to do. You know what to do, but then your mechanics of action is just still because it doesn't have the adequate trigger to actually, actionize it. So the soul gets actionized. Soul then makes use of buddhi and makes use of um, the organs to take actions only when the ahankar triggers it ignites the actions. So that's why ahankar acts as a trigger for action. So those are the four inner organs and the way they are related to each other, the way they function together when anything is happening around our life. Then we understood that the buddhi has a primary three functions. It has three powers. One is called Grahan Shakti, meaning the power of receiving, recognizing, grasping. So the speed, how much is the speed of recognizing a thing is what is defined by the Grahan Shakti. That somebody will be very fast in learning things. Somebody will request, hey, can you please repeat? Can you speak little slow? That is because the Grahan Shakti is different. The grasping power is different for different people. So the speed at which you can analyze things, you can query from chitta and then make a perfect decision. Oh, it matches with this, or the speed at which you can register it. You heard a thing, and before the next subject, because somebody is continuously feeding you data, and it is only by the speed of intellect you can grasp as well as you can retain, and you can kind of then register within your chitta. So the dharan shakti defines that, okay, you grasped a thing, but then before the next subject before the next subject is fed to you, are you able to register it also at the same speed? Right? So that's what your dharan shakti will, how much you're able. Otherwise, it will get replaced. You forget things. Oh, what did he said just a minute ago? That time I heard it, but now because some other subject came, I forgot that what he said 2 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, or just a sentence ago. This is where the dharan shakti comes into picture. How much do we have the retention power? So this is also based on how much our buddhi is capable, right? So this is what the intellect is. How much intelligence we have, how much sharpness we have in our buddhi. So the speed at which our buddhi can work can be defined by the parameter of intelligence, but vivek is about the right and wrong. You know, vivek is about doing the filtration, doing the categorization. Vivek is what makes your life prosperous in spiritual life. If you are viveki, if you have developed a vivek, vivek is what makes our thoughts, our actions righteous. Otherwise, the intelligence can be used also in performing non-righteous act very intelligently. So you're very sharp, but it doesn't mean that you have vivek. You are applying your intelligence in wrong direction. But when vivek arises, then you start refraining yourself from wrongdoings. You rather like to choose right things to do. Based on how much vivek is developed, you decide you are able to recognize what is right versus wrong. So this is what is the difference between intelligence and vivek. And based on how much vivek is developed, our buddhi is accordingly either inclined into more materialistic subjects, or when it gets pure, then our buddhi accordingly, with the vivek functional, it become pure, and that's called hansa buddhi. So either it is kama buddhi or hansa buddhi. When it is hansa buddhi, then only the purity reflects in your actions, in your thoughts. um, so vivek is what actually, as we develop our vivek, our buddhi transform from kama buddhi to hansa buddhi. Okay, this was just the outline of what we discussed last time. And today's discussion will go around conscious mind versus subconscious mind. So if you are, let's say, performing an action and suddenly you get lost into some thoughts, but you would notice that your actions, the series of actions that we were performing, did not stop. If it stops, then that means you're doing that action for the first time. And you don't know, you don't have a trigger of action coming from Chitta. You do not know what is the next action that you have to take. Only for the new actions, it is but natural that you have to be conscious of it. Because consciously you have to devise the blueprint of new action. But when the blueprint of action is already stored in your chitta, because you have done it in the past repeatedly, the same road, you drive the same, signals every time you take left, every time you take right, the series of britis connect together. All those britis, one after other, has formed a pattern. So the britis are connected now. After this briti will rise. After this briti will rise. So that connected set of britis is what drives the mind and organs into karma without requiring mind to be 100% awake. So even though your mind is not, or rather, I'll say awake is also correct to say, but I'll say without requiring mind to be 100% conscious with the action. Okay. So whatever action we are doing, even though you're not 100% vigilant with your actions, but you are still able to perform those actions because you don't require 100% to be with it. You are still able to, because you don't have the requirement of devising those actions. The blueprints are already there in Chit. And this is what is the state of subconscious mind. So there is a parallel thread of actions going on. One which you are doing consciously, and then in parallel there is another thread of actions which is happening subconsciously. Okay, you're doing one thing consciously, but then something else is happening within your body. You're either shaking your leg, you're moving your hand in certain way, and you don't even notice, you don't even consciously register that. Your buddhi is not paying attention to that, what else you're doing. And you're doing in that way because you have been doing that way even in the past. This is just a repetition of what you have been doing. So subconscious mind is a state in which mind doesn't have to involve the intellect to devise new pattern or new actions. Mind simply receives the pattern of action from chitta and just deliver it to the organ of actions, and the action happens. Mind involves buddhi, the intellect, only minimally, insignificantly for the actions to happen subconsciously. But of course, the intellect is involved, but it's not 100% involved for devising new action. But when you devise new action, new pattern, you're making a new pattern, that's when The mind and buddhi have to be 100% consciously with the action. And that is what, so for, so you have a scenario of repetition of old actions or something that you habitually do. This is what subconscious mind, this is where your mind get into subconscious state because you don't need to be 100% awake for doing that. Not necessarily it will go into subconscious state, but sometimes we just don't want to be that intensely involved because you know that, oh, this is, you get lazy. You get lazy about it. You start losing your consciousness around it because this is something where you don't have to exercise your intellect too much. So when there's a repetition of any old actions, any habit, that's when mind has a chance to get into subconscious state. And in that, the actions are driven by the britis which are connected to each other. And that pattern of, the connection of britis is what is reflecting in terms of in the form of habits that we have in our life. But for new action, requires conscious mind. You consciously choose the new actions because whenever you have something new to be performed, that's when you become very attentive, become very alert. You cannot subconsciously do the new thing. Subconsciously you can only repeat the things that you have done in the past, but any new thing that you have to do, that's when you get little still and then you focus and you choose to do, even though you think that no, I am doing the new thing and I'm still lost into something. No, you're not lost into something while you're doing new thing. When you're lost into something, that time you again the subconsciously you repeat the things, and you basically you connect the new britis with the old britis. The new britis that you're forming while performing actions, these new britis just go into the tail of old britis, and then the old britis has all the leading, actions defined. So that's when you get little subconscious then, because now, okay, now rest of the part is easy for you. When you think, oh, rest of the part is easy, now you don't have to be that intensely involved. So what happens is in the chitta your new britis, they just connect to the series of old britis. So the connection is still established inside. There is a series of britis now again lined up to define, or rather to guide your course of actions. So that's when you again from conscious state of mind, you drift to become or hold unconscious mind, subconscious mind. Then you subconsciously start doing things without paying attention, right? So the britis are the vital, driving factors when something is happening subconsciously. If anything happening subconsciously, it is happening only because those series of britis are there in our chitta, which have a defined pattern of actions. You have been repeatedly doing the same thing, and hence you are able to do subconsciously. So I hope this clarifies. If anybody has any question around it, please put forth here. We'll discuss further on that.
Jai Sadgurudeo, everyone. Jai Sadgurudeo,
Oh,
everyone. So,
definitely.
you were talking of retention power,
Yeah.
but science also says that, you know, women at a certain age have something called brain fog.
Mhm.
So, how does science sort of weave into the retention power when it comes to meditation?
Yeah. Usually, when we talk about buddhi, mind, memory, the doctors or in the medical science, they would not relate that to the inner organ because they don't know the soft part of it. They only know the physical manifestation of it. For every emotion, there is a physical manifestation in our brain. Now, if you have fear, then certain signals are created in the brain. When you have the depression, there's certain waves that are like more functional. When you are in anxiety, you know, when when you're happy, certain hormones, certain uh, if you're relaxed, peaceful, certain other waves, alpha waves are more operational. So, as we understand, only the physical manifestation of our emotions can be read by the physical science. The physical science cannot tap into the soft inner organs, which are not physically uh, perceivable by the gadgets. Gadgets cannot perceive buddhi. Gadgets cannot perceive mind. Gadgets cannot perceive the chitta or ahankar. What they can see only the manifestation of their actions, which manifest in the form of signals, in the form of electricity, in the form of magnetic field, in the form of hormones, in the form of waves in brain. And that's why even though the science thinks that the certain side of the brain is responsible for your one certain aspect of emotion, it does not mean that the generation of that is rooted to the brain itself. The emotion actually generates by the inner organs, but the physical manifestation, the superficial manifestation, is where the brain comes into picture. But having said that, the other side of it's like both way, it's like it's not just one directional. The transaction is both ways also. It's something like, let's say your mind is driving you into habit, but if you restrain yourself, if you pull your hand, because the buddhi is there, buddhi will say that no, this is not right, let's stop doing that, and you start holding some sanyam within yourself. That means now physically you are altering the things. Now your physical alteration, physically something that you were performing before, now you want to change that. So bringing that change, the change has to manifest also from outside, and then it will accordingly alter the way our inner faculty works. So same thing applies with the brain also. If you infuse some chemical in the brain which can trigger the feeling of joy within you, it is possible because the manifestation is not only one direction, it is also impacting the other direction. Looking at the subject only, our emotion changes. Similarly, the kind of chemicals that are introduced in the brain, that chemical will then impact your mind, and accordingly your emotions will align to it. So it's both either the emotion happens first and then the chemical happens in the brain, or the chemical is introduced and then emotion will align to it. So both way it is happening. And this is why the physical science can correlate everything just by looking at the brain itself. But how does the yogi do? The yogi who can even act without body, those who have got hold of the spiritual power of the soul, who can carry their sukshma sharir outside the physical brain, which is just the part of the sthul sharir. The sukshma sharir doesn't have the physical brain, but even in the sukshma form, in the subtle body also, one can feel the emotion, one can feel the anger. Everything can happen from the plane of the subtle body as well, because there you still have the mind, you still have the intellect, you have the four inner organs in the sukshma sharir, but you don't have brain over there. You don't need brain. Brain is just the physical manifestation of what's going on inside your four inner faculties. Only when you have to physically manifest that through your senses, through your organ of actions, you require brain over there, because all the mechanics of what you thought to do has to first manifest into signals through the brain. The signal has to pass to the organ of actions, then the body moves. Your hand moves upward only because you receive uh, electric pulses from the brain, which causes your hand to lift up. So if that electric pulses stop coming from the brain, your hand will not move, even though you desire to move. Your mind says move your hand, but you're not able to get the electric pulses from the brain for your hand to move up. That's why brain is required, all for the physical manifestation. But when you're operational at the plane of subtle body, at the plane of causal body, at the plane of your own self, then the brain is not required. It's beyond brain. I hope this clarifies the difference between brain and intellect.
It
Just
sort of did, but yeah, yes.
Jai Sadgurudeo Shikhaji. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Please complete your thought.
Yeah, Utkarsh, yeah. Please go ahead.
Ji.
Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on Shikhaji's question. Uh, Brain fog is something that has impacted me heavily, and over the years I've delved into sadhana to help with it, and also along with other therapy, medications, and whatnot. But my interactions with a lot of American colleagues, especially during the COVID time, those 3 years, I learned that that's when I got a clearer understanding of what brain fog is. So one of my leaders, one of the executive leaders at my company, he gave me a wonderful example of what brain fog is, how he experienced it firsthand during his COVID episode. That he was physically not too sick because of COVID, but just doing daily activities, like he knew he had to step down into the kitchen, get a bowl, pour some cereal into it, pour some milk, get a spoon, and get started. He knew all this. That was his subconscious habit. But just he would step down into the kitchen and he would just keep standing there. He knew what he was there for. He remembered the steps if you would ask him. But there was something that was just preventing him from lifting things or being very, very slow in progressing with each of the simple steps that he had done 1,000 times before subconsciously. So, like a habit. And those were some of the things I also faced in not just physical activities, but also like being at a work meeting when I had COVID, and when I had brain fog occurring from my as a result of my panic disorder, anxiety disorder. I could not do the basics of interaction, even basics of turning switching on the computer, logging on, and I know that I'm on a meeting, that I'm supposed to run it, and I have to screen share something and do notes, just not being able to do basic things, basic steps that I have done so many times before for 20 years now. That was brain fog, which just completely impacted what I had in my subconscious mind. And it even prevented me, my conscious my well, the mind and intellect from taking over and helping me out then. And I had to just excuse myself that I apologize, I'm under the weather. I'll reschedule this. Is that is there a solution to it when one faces? And I think Shikhaji was also asking about the same thing that
Yes, precisely, Utkarshji. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you for elaborating.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying this. So the framework, basic framework that I was discussing about was just to build this understanding that when the brain fog has happened, and if you say that through meditation, sometimes people are advised that in that case, if you do meditation, breathing, your brain fog will go away. This is only because, as we understood, that when anything that your inner organs have wanted to perform or manifest into actions, it requires the interactions between the inner organ and the outer organs. Without successful interaction between inner organ and outer organ, the actions will not manifest physically. So, brain fog could be rooted to two things. One, either the outer organs itself is handicapped, in the sense at that point of time, either the brain is not able to produce the signals. That could be one thing. Or second thing, it could be because your intellect is not working properly to analyze things faster, meaning even though the chitta has the vrittis of actions and it is rising, but buddhi is not able to capture it, not able to analyze it, not able to create the blueprint of actions that we need to perform. So when we meditate, when we do breathing exercises, at least the inner side we can improve. We can bring more consciousness into it. If our consciousness are scattered, then through meditation, through breathing, we are able to sharpen our buddhi. Our Guruji, also, Swamiji always says that buddhi can be enhanced, meaning the speed at which buddhi can work. This can be enhanced by the practice of pranayam. Pranayam plays a vital role in speeding up our buddhi, in sharpening our buddhi. And that's why when you perform pranayam, at least you can improve the speed of your intellect. And when you perform meditation, then you can improve the consciousness level within yourself, meaning you can be more focused. And when you are more conscious, it's like you're providing more uh, energy for inner organ to work. So you're providing the speed by pranayama and you're providing the energy, the conscious energy by meditation. So when these two combined, now you are more efficient with your inner organs. And when as we understand that there's always a physical manifestation of what happens inside our inner organs. If somebody is getting depressed, you will see that not only he is mentally depressed, but there'll be some physical signs which will start showing up in terms of heartbeats going down or up, or the brain fog, for example. All that are also the reflection of what is happening inside. So when you improve your inside, automatically your physiological reactionary changes will happen within your brain, within your body. And that's when your brain fog can get clear also. And that's why the breathing and meditation helps.
So, science says at a perimenopause or menopause stage, a
Mhm.
drop in estrogen, one of the hormones, causes brain fog. So, again, I want to understand the correlation of hormonal changes
Mhm.
and how it is tied to, all of the four organs.
Yes. Yeah, so as we understood in the beginning that there's a two-way transaction. There's always two-way transaction. Either the transaction is from inside to outside, or the transaction is from outside to inside. Our circumstances around also impact our mind, and our mind can impact our actions. Right? How you behave in certain circumstances, that could be also immaterial of what the circumstances is. It's like who you are. Based on who you are, what kind of sanskaras, what kind of vrittis you have inside, what kind of vivek you have inside, that can, create your reactionary work in response to what you see outside. But then there are certain people who are in more, kind of receptive way, where whatever they see, whatever they get, it will impact their inner core, and then the thoughts will start changing accordingly based on the circumstances. They're impacted, they're not rigid and strong with their own inner understanding. They're very fragile, so things are impacted. Now, here also, with this, we understand that our inner organs are impacted by physiological changes, either outside or even in the body. Even though anything which happens in the body is outside for the inner organs is inside. Your body, the physical self, the physical layer is outside. So anything that happens in the brain, anything that happens in your body, all that has a reverse impact to your mind as well, reverse impact to our inner core as well. And that's why if there's any chemical change, any hormonal change in the body, that physical manifestation will align with the inner manifestation, inner change. So accordingly, your mind, your intellect will start getting impacted. When you go to sleep, for example, when we go to sleep, the sleep happens not only because your mind start receiving the nidra vrittis from inside, but there is also certain hormones, certain signals in the brain that start rising, and in together there is a physical disconnect created. Only when the physical disconnect is created, when your what does brain do? Brain signals and the chemicals help in deactivating the outer organs, because for you to get into sleep, the the you have to cease the action from outside as well as from inside. For outside to cease, the brain plays a role. Brain has to create that certain, chemical and signals which will deactivate your outer organ slowly. And inside, your consciousness has to be pulled so that your intellect become idle, your chitta starts become a little silent, because as the mind starts pulling its consciousness away from these inner organs and start going back to the origin, to the soul, then slowly all these inner organ also start becoming idle, non-functional. And that's how the nidra slowly grips in the tamogun. Just, I mean, the basically the tam quality only become functional, which just kind of put a dark layer over all your experience. You then live in a state of nidra vritti. In that nidra vritti, there's only tamogun, and everything else is darkened out. There's no connection with the organs. The organs are also non-functional. So in this, analogy, we are trying to understand that there is impact on both directions. The impact happens from both direction, either from inside to outside or outside to inside. And that's why when there is any hormonal change in the body, then there'll be impact on your mind, in your intellect, because your inner core also aligns with your physical change. If somebody cut, let's say somebody get a bruises, right? If there's a blood flow, because you got a cut, a blade cut, a knife cut, something, the physiological changes happen, but then the emotions also align to it, because it sees it, it then triggers the panic within you looking at it. So for every physiological change that happens in the body, there is a reactionary change within our inner faculties. And that's why, when something like this happens, when your hormone changes, then accordingly your mood changes, your mind changes, your intellect accordingly behave differently. Yeah. Thank you.
Jai Sadgurudeo, a very interesting discussion. I wanted to share one other thought here. Um, in every analysis, I have seen that there is always two approaches that work. One is, you can call it like two ways. One is outside in, inside out, or tops down and bottoms up, one or the other.
Mhm.
So when we look at the chemistry and the brain, complex analysis is bottoms up analysis, and that's what a lot of the medical science and professionals, doctors, the psychologists, psychotherapists, they all excel from that perspective, which is understanding the body complex, and it does help. Everything is about helping the situation. But I think a more holistic approach would be when we supplement that with the tops down approach. When I say the tops down, which is above and beyond the body and chemistry and complex, which is really the mind. And so even Swamiji says that when we meditate, the whole purpose for couple of levels of meditation is so there are no thoughts during that period of time. Otherwise, he does not really support that. He says that just closing our eyes and sitting for half an hour has no meaning. The meaning is you sit even for 10 minutes and maybe expand that. But no thought has to come in the mind. And we cannot meditate the whole day. You meditate like maybe 10 minutes, 30 minutes in the morning, same thing in the evening. So, how do we carry the rest part of the day when most of the activities are happening and all the turmoil is happening and the mind is getting infected inside out, outside in, and all that? That is the biggest challenge. And so, when we master the art of meditating, when we are mastering that there's no thoughts entering the mind, and we understand the power of the mind and respect it, then I think that is a good, let's say, start. But then, how do we carry that and use that for the rest of the day? And even before sleeping, actually, when we go into the swapnavastha, I think that is one area where a lot of the doctors, psychologists, and all these people, they begin to um, lose out basically, and that is where the answer comes from, spiritual depth understanding, and um, so I think anything that we can uncover where we maintain that ekagrata, that is also being very nicely said, I think, in most of the scriptures. I'm sure in Swarved also, where how do we create that ananyata so that the outside events does not impact that mind process, and we have to basically figure that out. And some of the ways could be to engage the mind in contemplating about the conscious elements, entities, as opposed to samsaric entities. We apply that in the samsaric entities with the help of the buddhi and vivek. when it is needed. And I think most of the challenges begin to happen where we begin to um, 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 disconnect with that thought actually. So I just wanted to throw that, and I would love to hear others' perspective on that as well. Ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Niranjan. Jai Sadgurudeo. I have a question for Vijayji. Um, this is Ajay. So this is very deep topic. Vrittis. I have a question on vrittis. So is vritti equivalent to thought? Like is the vrittis are similar to what is thought? Like what how does we get series of thoughts? Like you said, like there is series of vrittis that directs the action, and
Mhm.
there is something like sometimes the
Yeah.
mind gets into So if you can clarify that, that would be great. Thank you.
Right, right. Yeah, so Britis are everything. Everything is a Briti. Uh, if you sense something from outside, that also create a Briti. Okay, and goes in the chitta. It's like you're creating new Britis. Something for the first time we have seen, then it will register that as a Praman Briti if it is direct experience. And then there is something called Smriti Britis. The Briti is actually of 5 types. Okay, the Britis, let me see if I can type, I don't know why. Britis are of 5 types. Okay, called Praman, Viparya, Vikalp, Smriti, and Nindra. These are 5 kinds of Britis. So when you are getting thoughts, the thoughts could be of different origin. Thoughts can come directly from chitta, because thought is a very generic term. Thought, the English word thought is a very generic term, but you can clearly decipher, you can differentiate whether it is a memorial thought, meaning thought which is coming from something that has already happened in the past and you're just kind of remembering it, then that is smriti vritti. Okay, the smriti vritti is rising and your buddhi is recognizing it, and you are getting conscious about what is coming from inside as a smriti. You're recognizing it, that's how you're experiencing. Oh, this is that, this thought, this thought. The moment you experience a thought, that means buddhi is functional, it is able to tag it and recognize it. This is what you got. So either you can get it from the chitta as a smriti vritti, because something that has already been there in your chitta, now it is rising as a smriti. Okay, so the thought could be smriti vritti, or the thought which you're saying a thought could be a new vritti information, meaning it is now getting created. The thought is getting created now, which will go and register in the chitta as a new vritti. So when it is the formational thought, then the formational thought is not coming from your chitta. Formational thought is actually the result of the vivechan, the act of buddhi. The buddhi is acting and creating, weaving and preparing the next conclusion of what you are experiencing. So based on that, your new britis are getting created. For example, you are experiencing a thing. When you experience something new, then that sense of experiencing is actually creating a new briti. And that sense of experiencing is creating as a new briti and going in the chitta as a briti. So everything that you speak, everything that you feel, either it is for you to express something outside or to experience something from outside to inside, In between, there is an intermediate state of a britti in the mind in the form of thought. Thought is something which you are generically saying the intermediate stage of your experience, intermediate stage of your actions. Every experience that you get from outside also create a thought, and that thought is a term given that time to the formational vrittis. For the formational vritti, you are saying it's a thought, and then it goes in as a vritti in the chitta. Either it goes as a praman vritti, meaning if it is like very true experience, what you see is what you are registering, or it goes as a viparya vritti, where the reality is something else, but you created a thought of something else. You perceived it falsely as something else, and that registered as a vritti in your chitta. But before it registered, it creates a thought within you. So it's a formational thought, and that goes and registered in the chitta as vrittis. Or it could be the, you know, something that actually non-existing. It actually doesn't exist, and you just random thing. For example, Swamiji said in Patanjali Yoga Darshan Bhash, he gave the example that. There are things which is only spoken in words, but there is no reality of it. For example, the son of Banj. Banj is a word that is given to a person who cannot, the lady who cannot bear the child. The son of a Banj. It's only in words, because it's not a reality. So this kind of terminology is also a random thought which is weaved by the mind and intellect together, and then it goes and register in your chitta. So thoughts are of different nature, formational or the smriti, or yeah, I mean, either it comes from inside or you are generating it from outside.
Thank you, Vijay.
I think one of the thing Vijayaji will be very helpful is what are the tools that can be used for in the samsara when we uh,
Yeah, so no,
address
no,
the points. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, your voice was breaking at the end. I thought you're done. Um, yeah, so anyway, but we are talking about the tools, when we develop all this understanding, why we are even willing to understand this subject. We are in a satsang. Satsang is for the purpose of purifying ourselves, purifying our inner organs. Satsang is one that acts as a, sabun, the soap which can clean our inner organs, our buddhi, intellect, the mind, the man, the chitta. It cleanses, the satsang is what cleanses it. So when we are developing this understanding here, the reason behind that is so that we can get more conscious about what we are performing in our day to day actions, in thoughts, because everything is going to pollute our chitta. Everything is being registered in chitta. And what is registered in chitta is what drives our future actions. So when we know this mechanics, then it is very important to always behave consciously. We should not get into the state of subconscious mind ever. We should always remain conscious, because even with the conscious mind, you can still leverage your past experiences. You will just consciously leverage that. You will apply your past experiences consciously and not habitually. It is very important to always remain conscious, and also know the fact that whatever is inside may not be correct all the time, because you are also registering the viparya vritti. Viparya vritti is something which is not the correct experience. The subject is something else and you experience it something else. You created one, for example, somebody has created the impression about somebody, okay, and you think, now I know this person is like that only. So every time, even though the person has changed, okay, even the current state of the person is something else, but just because you're so rigid with your own registered experience, you are not willing to accept the change that has happened in the person. And it might happen that even the time you registered, maybe you perceived it that way, but the actual nature of that person was actually something else, because he's not consistently behaving the way you perceived. If somebody behaves consistently the way you have perceived, then it is pramanvriti, meaning now you know that he is like that. But we should always be open, should always be open to accept the change. We should not think that this person will remain like that only. If we hate somebody, if we have dvesh for somebody, if we have fear for something, we should not think that this is going to consistently remain like that, because change is the nature of the world. Prakriti will keep changing. So we should not always think that whatever is inside is true. Whatever you thought is true, maybe contextually it was true at that moment, but maybe it has changed now. Circumstances has changed. The person has changed. His behavior has changed. His thoughts has changed. We should be open to accept it. That's why Namdev Sarkar clearly says that you should never listen only to your heart and only to your intellect. But sometimes what you see, your intellect says that you have seen this, but maybe your past experience will then help. No, even though I see him doing this thing, my intellect says that he is doing the wrong things, or something that I don't approve of. But my past experience, my heart says that he cannot do this. Maybe I'm perceiving something wrong. You will revalidate your current perception only when you listen to what you have already known about the same person in the past, right? So sometimes your chitta will help, sometimes your intellect will help, but only concluding things based on the intellect or based on the chitta is never correct. That's why Namdev Sarkar says, no, you should not listen only to your heart, not listen only to your intellect. Rather, you should always be open for revalidations, and remain only conscious and capture the new subject and accordingly make the decision based on whatever is currently happening. Perceive that and then apply your past experience and your current intellectual power to make a conclusion, not solely based on what you have rigidly made an impression about in the past. So with all these mechanics, when we understand in the spiritual life, we should accordingly behave. We should always understand this, that because I am caught into a pattern of habits, if something I feel very difficult to do, or habitually very tied up and not able to come out of it, the only way to break free from that is to stop feeding or strengthening the same pattern. Because once we understand this logic, we know that we have a series of patterns already stored in our chitta, which is habitually driving my course of action subconsciously. Only if I break that pattern or rewire new pattern within my chitta, I will not change my habit. My habit can change only if I rewire with a new pattern. And for new pattern to happen, I have to consciously act. I have to really be very conscious of what I think, what I speak, what I act. Only consciously I can rewire, redesign my chittas and vrittis. So, the satsang today only is for the purpose that we have to consciously follow the right things, whether it comes from inside or it contradicts our inside. But we have to consciously, with vivek, analyze what is right and just do the right thing. Not follow your heart, not follow your intellect alone. Just do the right thing.
Ji, thank you so much. And one other thing, Vijay ji, which I find at least that helps me, is to engage the mind in constantly engage the mind, because even if when we are working,
Mhm,
we're not interacting with people, but our mind is constantly thinking about, oh, what is that person thinking? What is that person maybe doing? I don't know what will happen tomorrow. So the mind is
mhm,
constantly throwing these curved balls, and that's what
mhm,
makes the people become more overworked. And it
mhm,
used to be one of the challenges with me actually long time back, right? Till I got interest in the satsang. So what I try to do is constantly keep listening,
mhm,
Shravanam, all the time, whenever I
mhm,
can, about
mhm,
some Mahapurush, be it
mhm,
Swamiji's Amritwani, be it somebody else's, but not a Kathavaj. It has to be a Mahapurush, right? And
mhm,
then I realized that you put on a kavach actually. So you're
mhm,
wearing a kavach. So your mind, actually, the mind can be your biggest asset, but this is your biggest enemy also.
mhm,
So we think that the other person who is giving difficult time or situation, creating bad situation, is my enemy. It's never true. So then what happens is now you begin to have a positive thought about everybody else, even if somebody is acting weird
mhm,
against one, because now the realization has come that your mind is your biggest enemy. Once we acknowledge that, and
mhm,
now we begin to engage that mind into that shravanam or kirtanam or whatever we can, right? Or something else, that the tool at least has helped me to put myself into all kinds of situations without getting touched too much. So I just wanted to share as part of this satsang
mhm.
that
Very good.
going to doctors and psychotherapists, I know that those markets are kind of thriving, but those doctors, they don't tell people that these kind of fundamental things that can only be accessed through satsang. And so that's so yes, you very beautifully said that that is why we are doing all this. We are dissecting the problem across the board, but whenever we dissect, and if we don't do it in a holistic way, then it is always going to be a half glass full actually. In
Mhm,
order to have a full glass full,
mhm.
it has to be a complete circle with all these things. So yeah, thank you.
So I really want to thank Vijayji for his insights and sharing his wisdom, and I also want to thank all the participants so far in engaging in this wonderful conversation. Looking at the time, like Vijayji said, we would probably skip the conversation session or discussion session because we already had that. But I would definitely want to invite anyone who has joined this session for first time. Please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and if you want to share something, what you learned from this satsang, please go ahead and do that. Okay. Seems like there's nobody new here. So once again, heartfelt thanks to all the participants who have actively engaged in this discussion and brought up insightful thoughts and share interesting facts with others. With that, now we'll move on to the Shanti part. We have reached the last phase of today's satsang. I request everyone to sit down for Shanti part. In Shanti part, We chant for peace for everyone in this universe. May Sadgurudeo blesses the entire cosmos with peace, love, and prosperity. I would now request Devji to recite the last few lines of a Shanti Path for us.
Shantipat. Hey Prabhu Shanti Sarup Ho. Shanti Shanti Maya Shanti. Hey Prabhu Shanti Pradan Kara. Shanti Shanti Sukha Shanti. Shanti Shanti. Hey Prabhu Shanti Pradan Kara. Duraho Sarva Ashanti. Deva Sada Para Shanti Me. Shanti Santi Sukha Shanti. Just to Gurudev. Thank you.
Jai Sadgurudeo Devji. Thank you, Devji, for a soulful recitation of the Shanti Path. I would like to thank all of you for joining today's satsang. I encourage everyone to ponder upon the topic we discussed today. I would like to extend a heartfelt thank to Sulbhaji, Vijayji, and Devji for their seva in the satsang, and Shikhaji, Utkarshi, Mayaji, Niranjanji, Ajayji for their active engagement in the session, and the whole Vihangam Yoga team for organizing this satsang. I pray Sadgurudev for peaceful and spiritual week ahead for all of us. See you all next Sunday at 9 a.m. EST on the same Zoom session. Have a wonderful day and a week ahead. Jai Sadgurudev.